Thank you very much. Um, is there a way that I can see? I'm just going to have a look at the chat. We are live. Marvelous. If you have access to chat, could you just say hello in the chat bar? Then at least I know someone is there and listening, as I can see no images at all. I see in the Q&A, chat is disabled. Thank you very much. Okay. Chat is disabled. They can drop in at the Q&A. People don't have access. All right, lovely. Thank you very much, everyone. Well, my name is Sean Cunningham. I am a crisis manager for a company called Vestas. Vestas make and service and sell wind turbines. We're the largest wind turbine manufacturer in the world, but I've only worked for them for a year and a half. My history is that I am a Londoner, born in London. I joined the London Police and I was there for 30 years. And since then, I've been a director of security for an entertainment company in London. And then I did that for 5 years. And then I did 5 years working for a risk consultancy called Control Risks, who are one of the most famous risk consultancies around the world, particularly in the field of kidnapping and international kidnapping. So I'm here today to talk to you about listening and listening skills and what listening has done for me and what I think listening could do for you. And I'm going to give you a few tips and tricks that you might be able to use, some of which I learned in policing, many of which I learned as a hostage and crisis negotiator, because it's through listening that you're able to command a situation, communicate to people, maybe some people would say manipulate people, but definitely help other people to alter their behavior in sometimes and more often than not in a favorable way. And so I'll go through that. When I was first asked to do this session, I was wondering what to call it. And you start out with a working title, and it's, how do you prepare yourself to listen, and very complicated terms like that, just that they didn't really scan. And of course, it's not until you write your essay or your notes that you actually look back and you go, that's what I'm actually trying to say. So quite frequently, it's really hard to see the title until the end. I then came up with a good question for you, which is, if you wanted to be listened to, who would you seek out? So I just want you to take 15 seconds now and have a think about who is it in your life that you think is the best listener. So that's your 15 seconds. Now, whoever you picked, you've probably had an opportunity to think, I'm going to pick that person, a parent, a teacher, a friend. You're going to know roughly why you chose them. You're going to have thought of some reasons why you chose them. But probably quite a few of you can't think of what are the characteristics that actually made them a good listener. And if you could think of those characteristics, then you could actually work out what you could do to try and develop those characteristics yourself. Okay, just clear that person out of your mind. And let me tell you what I've just done. I've asked you to go to a clear mind now. The way I got you to go to a clear mind was that I actually gave you an active task to start with. By getting you to think of something constructively, it clears your mind of other detritus, of other cobwebs, of other clutter that's around your desk. And so you start to focus on that single target. By focusing on that target, you can drop away a lot of the other thoughts that are in your head. It's one of the reasons that some psychologists say many people have really, really good ideas in the shower, because the water hitting your body tends to free your mind up. It tends to release your mind because that's happening to you. So you deal with that in a low level way, and then new ideas pop into your head. All right. So I gave you that. It's very, very much like stretching before any kind of sports activity. A game like I used to play rugby, you tend to stretch off before you go out and actually exert yourself and get into the game. So what I've tried to do here is actually give you a tool that's going to help you in future. If you know you're going into a situation where you need to listen, then you give yourself a small exercise first of thinking positively, constructively towards something, and then put it away. If you're looking for a 3-step plan, then probably that's the first step, is to clear your mind. Without a clear mind, you won't listen. People without a clear mind tend to have other things in their head, and it interferes with what they're thinking. They'll start to think about something they've heard and then ignore the rest. Or they'll start to think of what they want to say and not absorb what's actually being said. I mean, it's really not easy to think of nothing. So that occupying your mind, in very much in the same way that the writers of the Inner Game series of books say, occupying your mind in a different way, and that will free up your mind. So if we're on a step program, listen, I'm only probably going to give you about 3 steps, so there's not too much to worry about here. The second thing that I would talk to you about is a fact that I've had to learn throughout my life, which is that everyone is interesting. Now, people have challenged me on it, saying that's not a fact. I'm advising you it is a fact. Everyone is interesting. If you find someone in your life who isn't interesting, it's not their fault, it's yours. And it's only when you can accept that that you start to analyze what it is that you're doing that's not getting the interest out of them. So some people will talk forever. You'll find people that you chat to who just go on and on and on. So when I worked in the entertainment industry in London, some of the managers that were there, particularly those dealing with food and food service, found a lot of customers that used to complain. And one of the issues they had with the customers that complained was the customer would complain about their food. Their food was cold. It was cold when it came to the table. It wasn't quite what was ordered. I didn't like the way the waitress served me. I didn't like what happened. I haven't even got to the bill. And they would go on and on. I was at a managers conference where this was a point of discussion. And even though I came from a security side, I offered to take on the problem for them and to have a look at it. And because where we were working, everywhere was videoed, but there was also audio recording of what had gone on. I actually had some raw material to look at of some interactions between managers and complaining customers. The interesting thing I found was that it was the managers who were causing people to go on and on. So the managers were using one of the very first listening skills that we ever got taught, and that is the act of a minimal encourager. So the FBI actually use this in the US. They're very keen on this as the opening doorway to listening skills. And a minimal encourager is when you say mm-hmm, or go on, or and, or raise your eyebrows, or nod. And you do these all the time. The problem is you do them all the time without thinking about them. You're unconscious about the way you give these buy signs, as they're known by salespeople. You actually encourage people to talk to you. So when people start complaining, what these managers in the entertainment industry were doing were nodding and going, uh-huh, go on. And so everything they were doing was encouraging the person to speak. Now, if you have someone who's reticent to speak, buy signs and encouragement and minimal encouragers are really positive. But now, what I'm going to suggest to you is that you can't always learn just by listening to this and then going out and doing it. Start to look for it in other people. The place you'll see it the most frequently, and some of you will have sorted this out in your heads already, is on a mobile phone. So watch your friends on mobile phones and start to count how often they go, mm-hmm, uh-huh. In a way, they're just allowing the person on the other end of the line to know that they're still there without a visual representation of them. But it's actually doing so much. It does keep the conversation flowing. So if you want to control a conversation because you want to listen accurately to the detail that's there, you sometimes need to close a conversation down. So actually, an effective pause and giving no kind of buy signal, not registering at all, is a really good way of bringing that to a conclusion. Now, on the other side of the people who go on and on and on, you've got the people who don't say anything. Well, how can you listen to them? There's a couple of ways that you need to think about. If you come across someone who is standing by a wall and you see them and it's your friend Peter and you say, "Hello, Peter, how are things?" And they go, "Fine." So there's a couple of things they've done there. They're giving you a signal that things are not fine by giving you a tone of emotion. Quite frequently, the tone of emotion that people give to you is involuntary. It's true and involuntary. It's true because they haven't actually consciously thought about it. So it just reveals how they actually are. So while their words may say fine, the music or the tonality of what they say is giving you a completely different message. Where you have someone like that, one of the important things to do is what is called emotional labeling. Now, this is really difficult where someone is in that situation where they're feeling quite down or morose, because it's sometimes embarrassing to turn around to people and say, "Oh, you don't sound fine." Yet that's the right thing to do. Ironically, when people sound happy, you actually go, "Oh, you sound really happy," because it's okay to go along with that. You sound really glad. You sound really excited about your prospects. Oh, well done. But when someone's in a down situation, it is sometimes awkward to say, "Oh, you don't sound fine." The other thing you do there with your listening is actually you listen to the tone that they speak in and the speed and the tempo that they speak in. So this happens quite frequently where people are, say, in a situation, it happened in my past, where people were in a situation where they may be in dispute. You might have two neighbors who are having an argument with each other. And they're shouting away at each other over a garden fence, and they're loud like that, and they're really fast in their conversation, and they're speaking over each other. And if you're told to go in and calm the situation down, some people's natural instinct is to go into that and go, "Okay, everybody, what's going wrong?" There's nothing more insulting or condescending than going in and hitting them with a tone that isn't the same tone as theirs. What you actually need to do in that situation is listen to their tone, listen to their speed, mirror it, but not their aggression. So you can say, "Hello, guys, I can hear what you're saying. I can hear you shouting. You're probably finding it hard to talk, to listen to each other because you're over talking." And then you can start to bring it down to a more sensible tone. This happens all the time with me in my home life, where people tell me something they're excited about, and you'll never guess what's happened. And I'll go, "What?" And I'm actually deliberately using a morose tone for humor. Unfortunately, it's come back to bite me too often. You probably do that yourselves. You're probably kings of sarcasm. But just be careful, because far too often, your sarcastic remarks can actually close people down. Another thing to think about here with people who only give you monosyllabic answers, i.e., they just say fine when you ask them how they are, is that you haven't actually asked them a properly open question. Weirdly, "How are you?" is an open question. The two words how and why are the two most open stem questions you can ask of anyone, and they're open because they demand an explanatory response. Difficulty with using how and why on a first engagement is it's too intrusive. It actually asks people to explain from the outset. Well, you're not an investigator. You're not investigating a crime. If you're just trying to build a relationship or build a rapport with someone, you'll do this. If you move on in careers and you move into sales, then one of the things you need to get to do is to use a soft and gentle question. Actually, "How are you?" is socially accepted as a soft and almost a closed question. Let me define these properly. So an open question means a question where you need an explanatory response, or you require an explanatory response. A closed question is where you want a specific response, such as, "Where do you live? What platform does the train to King's Cross go from?" There you'd get number 7 Acacia Avenue or platform 4. So those are closed responses. Yes, no questions are just the pinnacle of closed responses. Like, Sean, did you smash that window? I'd obviously say yes. And so that's where you end up getting to, but you don't go to those first. You should normally start with an open question. And open questions, who, what, why, where, how, and when, any of those sort of stems will take you in if you use an additional part of a sentence. So how and why, definitely open and require explanatory answers. What and when seem to be closed, but with when you saw that happen, what happened next is a double what, and you can take then people into an explanatory answer. If they're not opening up to you, then you'll start to notice that their tone is monosyllabic and their tone may be down, and then you can come in and emotionally label what they say and say you're starting to notice what they do, and they start to see that you are seeing these things on a different level. So clear your mind, I would suggest to you, is the first thing you need to do if you want to listen. Realize that everyone is interesting and you just need the skills to find out what it is that's interesting about them. The third step I have for you is what I sort of call the gamification of listening. So how do you make listening fun? How do you turn it into a game, into a challenge for yourself? And it's something that as a hostage and crisis negotiator, I practiced frequently away from the scene of an incident. Most of my incidents were people in crisis situations who had family disputes, or someone was locked in a room, or someone was threatening to injure themselves or harm other people, before I moved on to kidnapping and international kidnapping. And the same skills go for selling shirts in a shop to international kidnapping. It is about how well you listen. It is about how skilled you are as a communicator, and you're only really skilled as a communicator if you listen properly. So, what's the game to play? Here's the game. Some of you will have done this. It's how much information can I get from someone without revealing anything about myself? Now, I can do this, or I try to do this, particularly when traveling. If I'm on a train journey, if I'm on a plane, and I'm ending up sitting next to someone for a while, one of the games I'll play is start to engage someone in conversation and see how much I can learn about them. Now, it's quite interesting to see that people are really, really happy to talk about themselves and reveal huge amounts of detail about themselves. And all I'm doing quite often is concentrating on my open question skills, concentrating on my pauses, leaving them sufficient time to fill the space. If they start to fade, do a minimal encourager. There's also another issue, a technique you can use here, which is called echoing, which is using the last word of someone's sentence so that they keep going. And you use that last word of their sentence in a kind of up tone. An up tone, yeah, so you can even do it with two words at the end of a sentence. Sentence, well, it doesn't have to be a sentence, it could be a paragraph. So you see what I'm demonstrating there is just by using the last word as a question shows that you're still hooked into people. It's actually a small version of a paraphrase. I would imagine you have all heard of the term paraphrasing, and you understand paraphrasing as condensing a larger volume of words down to a shorter volume of words. But it's actually so much more than that in conversational terms. A paraphrase back to someone shows you've listened to the exact words they've said. A paraphrase back to someone shows that you're respecting what they're saying. A paraphrase back to them shows that you're interested in what they're saying and that they should feel interested about themselves. Each one of those makes you value the person more. Every time the person feels more valued, they'll give you more information, and more information is the name of the game. So a paraphrase is a really good thing to do. One of the other things with the gamification is trying to stop yourself becoming engaged in the conversation. Now, the way to do this, and this is really difficult, is to stop or reduce the amount of time that you use the word I. Every time you say I, it means you're about to talk about yourself. Every time you say I, it means you're going to reveal something about yourself to them. So you lose a point in the game. There are some times you cannot get away from it. If they turn around to you and ask for their opinion, if you're talking to a friend who's in a bit of a crisis, they're having a dispute with another friend and they can't understand what to get through, and they're looking at you as a kind of a friend, a mentor, a sounding board, and they ask you for your opinion. It's a really bad listening skill to actually tell them your opinion. One of the ways we get around it is, particularly in siege situations where someone shouts out through a door, well, what do you think? The best thing to do is to pause, consider, say, I've never been in that situation, or I'm not in your shoes. I don't know. How does it feel for you? And just throw it back to them. The more you can throw the ball back over the net to them, the better it will be. The more of the conversation they hold, the more of the possession of the game they have, the more information you will learn. And that's vital. But gamification of it, making that into a game and practicing it away from a real listening arena, will make you so much better when it comes the time to listen. I think the last thing I really want to say to you about gamification is this. Everyone you talk to will leave you hooks. Everyone. When people say something to you, the way that they say it, the terms that they use, the words that they use, the accent they have, the swiftness, the slowness, they are communicating to you all the time. And within that, they will lay hooks, normally in word form. So I've laid hooks for you today. I wonder if any of you have picked up any of the hooks that I've laid for you today. If you've been listening and you have good listening skills, you'll be able to just review in your own mind now any of the hooks that I gave you. And I'll be interested to see if we have a small Q&A in a few minutes, whether any of you picked up those hooks. But you need to listen for those. So there's so many things that you're actually listening for. You're not just listening to the words that they say to interpret them. You're listening to the tone that people come across with. You're listening and looking for the emotions that they're demonstrating in that. You're listening for the hook words, i.e. the words that they're really interested in. Because when you echo those words back, as I showed you echoing, that's what will open these people up and they'll start to give you more information. And the more information they give you, the better off you will be in terms of, well, let me just tell you, why have I benefited from listening? I've learned information that I didn't know. I've learned information that sometimes has confirmed what I've suspected. It's helped me to challenge my current thinking, and that makes my arguments stronger. It allows me to influence others with a very, very little effort. They respect the fact that I listen to them. There's nothing better than if your friends turn around to you and say, you are a good listener. Gives you greater time to make better assessments. If you're not talking, you have space to actually consider things. It's also relaxing. You don't have to solve everyone else's problem. Just allow them to voice and vent. Quite often people are not asking you to solve their problems. They're only asking you to listen. That means they want to get all their thoughts out so that they can think about what it is they need to do. More information will help you make better decisions. Gives you rewards. I mean, the more I listen to people, the more people think I'm a good listener, the more invites I get to sporting events and dinners and parties and that type of thing. It's just been priceless. It's enabled me to win arguments, to influence situations, and to gain a wider circle of experiences. And so I give it to you with all the best intentions that if you practice it, you'll get it right. The truth is, I'm not a good listener. The truth is, I have to work at it. Quite frequently, I forget to listen. You can't just turn it on. You actually need to think about the skills and to do it. Okay, I'm quite happy to take any questions and answers that anyone may have. We have 6 minutes left. I'm just going to see if there are any questions coming up in the Q&A channel. What's the best way to, yes, what's the best way to build trust with someone or even to get someone to open up, given that most people answer, how are you, we're fine, which may not really be an answer. Sometimes it's a pause and just standing with someone, indicating that you're not in a rush. The worst thing to be can be to interrupt too early. There were two guys called Fisher and Geiselman who did a study of people asking open questions. So you ask an open question, you know, what's happened today is a nice open question. I always do that kind of radio tone. So what's happened today? Fisher and Geiselman studied and realized that when people didn't answer, or people answered in a way that wasn't what you wanted to hear, you tend to interrupt within 7 seconds. So rather, don't interrupt, pause and keep the pause going. Some people say a 3-second pause is long enough. I don't agree. Just pause. Abdullah, how do you improve your listening skills? Just by practicing. Play the game. Today, go out. If you do nothing else, the easiest one is to echo. Echo, yes, because then people will ask you again. I did this last week on a course with some other people, and I ended up having to buy sweets for everyone who echoed me in the evening at a do because I'd forgotten I'd told them, and then I was off my guard. How did you first become a negotiator? What led you to wanting to do it? I actually did that because people said, "Oh, you can talk a lot." And I went on this course. I went on an interview, and it was more like a therapy session. And I appeared to have some sales skills as well. And so I was selected. And then I found out it's not about talking, it's about listening. The joy about being a crisis negotiator or even a hostage negotiator is you get to save lives. And that's really fulfilling. How did you learn to be a good listener? How long did I'm not a good listener, Leo. Listen to what I say. I am not a good listener. um, but yeah, I just keep working. I keep working on it. I've done quite a few of these things with success at schools. So there's more separate lessons there. We were actually running some lessons on that. Rada, I need to work on not interrupting. Sometimes it's oh, listen, that is so good. And do you know what? That's so honest of you to say that. Um, your own honesty with your own failings. That's why I say to you, I'm not a good listener. I've got where I got to because other people think that I'm okay at it or reasonable at it. But yeah, recognizing that you're not is the first thing. Just the not interrupting. So rather than not doing something, don't try not to do something, try to do something. And the doing something is listening for the hooks. So I mean, again, in the Q&A, did anyone, I would be really interested if anyone picked up any of the hooks I left for you. I did leave a couple of little deliberate ones there. Forgive me, Denis, if I've said your name wrong. If someone tells you something and you respond with a similar experience, is that good empathy or a little self-absorbed? I think it's a little self-absorbed. However, if you're actually in a mentoring role, if you're mentoring someone at work who's a junior to you or a new person, then it's fine. It's absolutely right to say, I went through that. Let me tell you my experience. If you're in a pure listening experience where they're talking to you about a problem they have, they don't really want to know they quite often know what the answer is. So more humility, Denis, and just let them fill the space. It's almost, if I could say to you, this is really weird because as at school I was always taught, someone asked me a question, give them an answer. You're now into the world of someone asks you a question, ask them why they've asked you that question. It's almost that thing, you never say yes or no, it's always ask a question back. At what point and how did you decide to become a better listener? I think it was only when it was 20 years into my policing career. That's how sinful this is. More police officers could do with listening training, and it wasn't something that we were able to market within the organization. Yet negotiators are called out to all sorts of situations, to save lives. Um, I didn't want to become a better listener until someone showed me how powerful listening was. And now I know it's powerful. I mean, ever since I did it, I got promoted and I ended up, getting an OBE and I ended up being a government advisor on things and then going to advise other governments around the world. All because I'm a listener and not for any other reason. It's just because of listening. How does one become a negotiator? Okay, so the sort of crisis negotiator I was within policing. So you got called into people on rooftops, people in suicidal situations. Forgive me if I should have pre-prepared you for the fact I was going to say the word suicide, because it does upset some people. But one of the things I got trained to do was actually to say the word suicide. We found it really difficult to say that to people, and actually it's one of the things you've got to confront people with and say, is that what you're thinking about? Because you need to know that. But there are so many other forms of negotiator. Every salesperson is a negotiator. Here is a secret for you. The military use negotiators. The police use negotiators. Pretty much all of their negotiation skills have come from sales. There's a guy called Cialdini, who writes some really interesting stuff on persuasion and influencing. And that's the kind of negotiator you want to be. Every salesperson is a negotiator. If you speak to any estate agent, they will tell you they are a negotiator. They do need a bit more training, in my idea. Leo, some of the best opening questions when you meet someone you would like to get to know. Okay, Leo. I would either pick on a point that they had raised, or I would ask them where they got something. So if they've got a book, if they have got a jacket that I like, I would say, "Oh, where'd you get your jacket?" So straight away, they're into the fact that you're into what you appreciate what they're wearing, you like what they're wearing. They're happy because you now admire them because they're wearing something nice, and then they're usually happy to talk about it. And as soon as they start to talk about it, they say, "Oh, I actually got it in Phoenix in Brent Cross." Brent Cross, you might echo. Yeah, it's there's actually quite a few shops, or no, there's not a lot of good shops there, but I was really lucky to find it. Oh, you were lucky. Oh, great. Yeah, no, I never have that luck. Humility. Oh, well, let me tell you where you might be luck. There you go, Leo. So that's one idea. Fisher and Geiselman, very good anonymous attendee. Thank you very much. Hooks, your career, you play rugby when Sharon, well done. Very, very good. Very good. I threw a tennis one in there as well, but it was only just throwing something across the net. Hi, Sean. Do you come to schools to share these tips with students? I have done, not frequently because I'm still busy convincing other people. Yeah, played rugby. Absolutely right. When someone had finished ranting, venting to me, how should I respond? With empathetic personal stories or more of a silent approach? Sammy, don't tell them what you've had. It's not that I had bosses whose nicknames were Two Sheds, because they had, or Black Cat because their cat was blacker than yours, or if you had one shed, they had two. And it became known that they were the ones who were going to try and up your story and basically show you that you weren't as important, or they might be trying to diminish your problems in your mind and they're trying to be helpful, but it's not. It was just a form of bragging. So absolute humility, that one of the great assets. So listening's the best communication skill. It will get you loads of things. You won't see them immediately. You'll only see them when you reflect back and you go, oh, I listened there, I did really well. The other time you'll see it is where you don't listen properly and you don't get what you want and you think, if only I'd listened. But don't show off. Nobody nobody in the listening thing, you're listening to them. Nobody wants to listen to you. What happens if you keep forgetting what the person said and they get annoyed with repeating what they said? Would that mean that the forgetful person is a bad listener? Sakina, I'd say that means the forgetful person hasn't cleared their mind. It means you're thinking too much about what to do. Now, I know I've given you a lot of stuff to think about. Here's a difficulty. I've given you a huge amount to think about. You can't do it all. Do one thing at a time and relax. Just relax. Don't try and solve people's problems. Don't try and do everything. just do one thing and do it well. If you do echoing, do it well. If you do paraphrasing, and that's the best one, do that really well. I say it's the best one because it's the one I like. Okay, my friends, I think we have come to the end of that. I hope you have enjoyed what I've provided for you. By all means, speak to the people who have put this on, Clive, Mitesh, Success at Schools, whoever it is you need to speak to. And I'm really delighted to have had this opportunity with you. Enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe. Cheers all.